afternoon, and thank you all for holding. I would like to remind all parties the call is now being recorded. If you have any objections, to please disconnect at this time. Thank you, sir. You may begin.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, to the National Soil Survey Center, and we'll just get rolling. Curtis Talbot's ready to go and talk about the MLRA Soil Survey Office responsibilities for ecological site inventory. Take it away.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on where your location is. As Mark said, my name is Curtis Talbot, and I am the Rangeland Management Specialist here at the National Soil Survey Center. Currently, I'm on the soil ecology staff, and prior to that, was on the soil interpretation staff for about 10 years, so Lincoln's been home for a good part of my career. A couple months ago, I was given the assignment to do this webinar on the new ecological site inventory effort. This is a far-reaching feedback over on this end. To cover the whole ecological site inventory would require at least a good week to cover, which we don't have that much time. So in order to focus my thoughts and my comments in a specific direction, I thought maybe I would concentrate on the MLRA Soil Survey Office and their responsibilities in this new effort, or not new effort, but in this continuing effort. Now, granted, I imagine a lot of folks listening in right now are not part of a soil survey office. However, probably everybody is in one form of a support role or another of these offices. So hopefully what I have to say will benefit everyone. I will not answer all the questions. You know, maybe this will spawn some future webinars addressing some of the other roles in this in the inventory effort. Time will tell on that. Okay, now I'm getting caught up on my technology. By the end of this little presentation, really my goal would be to dispel a couple of myths that I've heard now for about a year. The first being that soil survey is now in charge of ecological site descriptions. And the second, my soil survey office wasn't lucky enough or unlucky enough to get one of these new ecological site inventory specialist positions. I don't have any responsibility for ecological site inventory. It's just those offices that got the position. The interesting thing is as I've heard these rumors for the last year or so, I've been quite amazed at the gamut of emotions that run on this topic. There are folks that are, you know, thrilled with this new change in effort, and there are folks who are completely scared to death of it. So, but we'll try to put these two myths, get the truth out to both of these. Okay, and if that happens, then I'll consider this a presentation success.
How do you turn this on?
To start off, I'd like to go back to the document that kind of started this effort off and refer to a national bulletin that went out a little over a year ago titled Acceleration in Ecological Site Description Inventory and Implementation. Now, you'll notice I've highlighted the word acceleration, and that's specifically what this effort is an acceleration to an effort that's already occurring. It does not imply a complete transfer of responsibility. It's not a turf grab. It's not a hostile takeover, but simply just an acceleration of the effort. And I'll read a couple of lines from that bulletin. It starts off by saying the SSRA, or Soil Survey and Resource Assessment Deputy Area, is increasing support for the inventory and organization of ESDs. Then goes on to describe a number of new positions will be formed as part of this effort, both at the national level, at a regional level, as well as at a local level. Then says this effort supplements the ongoing development of ecological sites through funding of new positions, streamlining processes, quality control, and quality assurance. Then goes on to say that the S&T, or Science and Technology Deputy Area, will continue to provide technical expertise in ESG development and implementation, especially as applied to technology transfer, conservation planning, and training. And it ends with this distribution of responsibilities will allow for acceleration, expansion, and increased integration of an already successful program to better provide information to NRCS clients. Now, the important thing about this to catch out of this bulletin is, bottom line, if you were in a position that was supporting the inventory of ecological sites and the development of ecological site descriptions before this bulletin went out, you're still involved in it. This does not take away any responsibility, but simply adds to it or accelerates the effort. I have heard a few cases of some states that have said, well, gee, now that somebody else is doing it, I can take the responsibility away from Johnny, because Bobby's going to be doing all the work now. And that's the states that have done that. It's not in harmony with this bulletin, but both Johnny and Bobby are involved in this effort. The goal now is to balance the effort between the SSRA and S&T deputy areas. That's what we're trying to do at this time. Most of you listening to this have probably seen this map already, but for those who haven't, what this map shows is there were 7 regional positions with the targeted purpose of providing quality assurance to ecological site inventory effort. And this shows their areas of responsibility scattered throughout the country, broken out by MO, MLRA regional office boundaries. It's mostly current. There are a few changes, however. Up there in the north in St. Paul, Stacy Wolszewski has a new last name. She is now Stacy Clark, so there's a slight modification there. And then the position in Palmer, Alaska is, there's currently no assignment there at the time. In addition to these regional positions, if you look over on the lower right-hand corner, is, if you can read the text, is the staff of the new soil ecology team here in Lincoln. And there I am, second from the bottom, so I've got my little niche in the universe carved out for me. This next map is a little harder to read, but it displays the coverage of the ecological site inventory specialists who have responsibility for quality control. These are located in the MLRA Soil Survey Office, survey offices, and their boundary areas are delineated on this map, most of which probably they won't show up if your screen is anything like mine. However, the important part to recognize is the colors. The blue areas here are soil survey offices that have a ecological site position, a quality control position. It's funded through existing funds that were already part of the state. The pink areas represent those soil survey offices that have received new funding, if you will, or a redirection of SERGO funds as part of this acceleration effort. Now, this map alludes to kind of the rest of my talk, and that is, the question, what is the difference between one of those colored areas and how they address ecological inventory, and one of those white or light gray areas, those areas that do not have a position as of yet. Before we start talking about the differences, I'd like to briefly go over just the role of the MLRA Soil Survey Office. And I'm taking this directly from the National Soil Survey Handbook, Part 608.01H for those who care to pull out their handbooks and read along. The role of the Soil Survey Office, and a lot of these are specific to the, really point directly to the project leader in that office. And I'm not sure if there was any necessarily an order to these. Some of them kind of seem like they're sort of out of order. But the first one that's listed is the project leader there is responsible for developing and maintaining the long-range plan of operations for that office. Now, it would be our goal and our hope that if it's not that way already, and I'm sure it's not in the case of a lot of offices, that those long-range plans should have some mention in there about ecological sites and some application of accelerating that effort.
I can't get it working.
Another role of the Soil Survey Office is to schedule the work activities in that office. Of course, obviously, this not only goes for those employees that are assigned to that office, but as well as any additional expertise that may be needed. It's the responsibility of that office to coordinate that assistance and to make sure it's scheduled at the time when it's appropriate. And that would include the work for ecological sites as well. The project leader provides the leadership for the technical team. Of course, now that technical team is interdisciplinary, so once again, there is a little bit of a crossover on some of the responsibilities that may impact ecological site inventory. Next responsibility is the update of soil surveys. Of course, part of any update, jumping on my screen there. Part of the updating the survey includes updating the interpretations. And in its basic sense, an ecological site description is really nothing more than than probably the most basic interpretation on lands with natural or naturalized vegetation. So if you're updating the interpretations, then you also should be updating the ecological site description that's correlated to those soils. Also put a plug in here right now that most of you are probably aware that Part 610 of the Soil Survey Handbook, updating soil surveys, is currently out for review. And you'll see some parts in there that address the role of ecological sites and how that should be part of the update effort. Other roles of the Soil Survey Office to improve digital line work.
Thank you.
Another one, perform investigations.
Momentarily.
I'll take a second here to put a plug in for the soil ecology team. In addition to having responsibility for ecological sites, also has responsibility now for dynamic soil properties. Of course, we realize in developing an ecological site and the state transition model that
Hey, Curtis, you may not be aware, but
yes?
you're competing with someone's holding music.
I am. I'm not sure how to get rid of that holding music.
I can't hear
Can we contact the operator and ask her to trace it down?
Mark says just to keep on going, so I'll...
Okay.
I guess this is a standing problem with our webinars. But in these state transition diagrams, we recognize and we know that soils play a key role in defining the thresholds or the boundaries of those states. Now, in most site descriptions as they currently exist, at best that is a qualitative
We'll be with you in just a moment.
covering of those topics, and we have very little quantitative data to substantiate that. And this would be a real good opportunity to plug in a comparison study of dynamic soil properties in your long-range plan that would help define some of these thresholds and boundaries within the state transition model for the ecological site. Other role of the Soil Survey Office is to conduct quality control. Now, historically, prior to this acceleration, quality control, quality assurance pretty much resided at the state office level. And often that boundary between the two functions was pretty fuzzy. In fact, a lot of folks, it's tough for a lot of us to define the actual difference between quality control and quality assurance. But if we use part of the definition that quality control is responsible for 100%, looking at 100% of the work, then a lot of times, state office level, it would be safe to say that quality control was not being done across the board because the time has not been there, nor the resources to look it over 100%. The closer you can push quality control to the field, as has been found out in soil survey over the decades, the closer you can push that to the field, the more successful you'll be in covering 100% of the data and providing a better quality product at the end.
We're sorry for the...
So pushing the quality control down to the Soil Survey Office level, even for ecological site descriptions, is something that will bring value to the effort. Another role of the Soil Survey Office is to develop project and annual plans. It seems to me like that ought to be tucked up underneath right after the long-range plan. However, any of those projects that are part of the long-range plan need to be more fully developed into a project plan, and obviously if it's a multi-year effort, then an annual plan of operations needs to be developed. Another role is to follow standards, policy, and procedure. And here's another area where there's been darkness acceleration because we don't have any standards in place. Well, that's not debunk that myth. That is not true. It is true that these standards do not, ecological site standards do not occur in one handbook or manual, but they are, right now they're currently scattered throughout several. Probably most of the guidance occurs in the National Range and Pasture Handbook and in the National Forestry Manual and National Forestry Handbook. So, and until a new policy and standard comes out, then it is our responsibility to follow the existing standards and policies. So for now, we continue to use those existing standards until we get something different. Last role listed of the Soil Survey Office is to support National Cooperative Soil Survey initiatives. Now, in 2003, there was an ad hoc committee formed in the Cooperative Soil Survey called Ecological Principles. And even though that, at the time that was created, it wasn't directly impacting ecological sites, essentially that's what they were trying to get at, just through a roundabout way. And that committee has existed as an ad hoc basis for, it was about 3 or 4 conferences. And there's some work underway now, some efforts to make that a standing committee. Of course, it probably will have a different name, and we don't know exactly how that will play out. But it's safe to say that ecological inventory has been a focus of the Cooperative Soil Survey for at least the last 8 years. Another indication of the support that the Cooperative Soil Survey has for this effort is, most of you are probably familiar with the effort of NRCS, BLM, and Forest Service, all 3 of which are partners in Cooperative Soil Survey, to come out with an interagency ecological site manual and handbook specific to rangelands. And that will be coming out for review here rather quickly, so keep your eye out for that. So you see over this, many of these roles in the Soil Survey Office, although reading them directly out of the Soil Survey Handbook can apply strictly to soils, you can take and apply probably 80% of those over to ecological sites as well. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about the difference between an office that got one of these new ecological site inventory specialist positions and a soil survey office that doesn't have one of those positions. Now, I'll stress here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick on a couple of existing soil survey offices, and these were literally randomly picked. I literally just put my finger on the map, and that was the office that I looked at to use as an example. So this is kind of one of those candid camera moments. If there's anybody listening in from these offices, nothing in here meant to put you on the spot, but strictly to use your office as an example of how one might move forward in a long-range plan and project plans if you have one of these new positions, and as well as if you do not have one of these positions. Well, the selected office that has one of these quality control positions picked the one in Powell, Wyoming. This is MLRA Soil Survey Office 4-4. They received their soil quality assurance out of MO4 in Bozeman. If you remember back to that map for the regional ecological quality assurance positions, they'll get their quality assurance out of MO1 in Portland, Oregon, who is Kendra Mosley has that position. In this office, the staffing in this office is made up of a project leader. This is just according to their, I guess there may be changes, but according to the staff directories, this office is made up of a project leader, 2 soil scientists, and an ecological site inventory quality control specialist. In this case, it's a rangeland management specialist, but the nature of this position would change its flavor depending where in the country and what type of vegetation that this office would deal most directly in. And again, I want to stress here that we're going to look at some of the, just a real quick glimpse, some of the ecological site data in this office. And this is not meant as a critique at all of the work in this office, but strictly as an example of what occurs out there. And I'm sure for those project or soil survey offices, particularly those in the West, you'll see a lot of similarities between Powell and your office. But what I did is I put on, took Kendra's hat and put it on for about a half an hour worth, and took a real cursory glance at the ecological sites that are correlated to the soils in this office, just to see what kind of condition they might be in and where some future projects might lie. I found that there are currently 87 correlated ecological sites to the soils that are within that soil survey office boundary. The first thing that really jumped out at me is that 40% of them are currently correlated to out-of-date MLRAs. Those of you who have been around for a few years remember the update effort that we had to the MLRA handbook, Ag Handbook 296, probably about 5-6 years ago. And as part of that update, there were a number of MLRAs that were split or that requested to be split. In most cases, those were accepted, and new national lines were drawn to incorporate those changes. But anytime you make, as any of us involved in mapping know, once you make a change like that, then you automatically have data that's now out of date and needs to be recorrelated. And so this is, all this represents is that, 40% of the site soil correlations occur in those areas that there's now a new MLRA, and at some point, those need to be part of a project plan to be recorrelated to the proper MLRA. Out of those 87 ecological sites, I pulled 9 of them as a real quick 10% quality assurance check. Just take a quick glance at the status of the site descriptions. and found that none of those 9 had monthly precipitation or temperature data. Had annual information, but nothing down to a monthly level, which is one of the things that we recommend in the site description. All of them, they all had state and transition diagrams, which is good, but they're all at least 1 generation out of date. And so there's an effort there to bring those up to current conformity with the current standard. There were no photos attached to any of these site descriptions. And that would be, many of our users have remarked how helpful that is to have photos. So that would be a recommendation there that we add photos to these ecological site descriptions. And 2/3 of them were lacking any sort of reference as to what kind of data inventory was collected in support of that ecological site. We don't know whether it was just 1 data point or 100 or somewhere in between. So that's something that would need a little tightening up. Now to take that and bring that over into some, what would be some possible projects that you could put into your long-range plan for this office. One thing that kind of jumped out right at the top of the list is this soil survey office is right in the heart of sage-grouse country. Many of you, particularly those out west, are aware of the sage-grouse initiative, and realize that the area where the sage-grouse are is one of NRCS's priority landscapes for the next 5-year period. So I would think that if I were a project leader in an area that was affected by one of these national initiatives, then it might behoove me to make reference to that in my long-range plan, and have some projects that would contribute to that effort. And then looking at the current site descriptions for this area, if you look at them, most of them do make a very brief reference to sage-grouse, something along the lines of, can be used for necking grounds or brooding areas. But I think we can do a lot better in developing a wildlife interpretation for this species that's of such importance to the West right now. And then going back to some of the things that found in that little quick half-hour review, you can have projects update the out-of-date MLRAs, record and enter the monthly precipitation and temperature information, bring the state transition diagrams up to current standard, find those photos that were taken in the past, or go out and take some now and include those with the respective states and community phases within those ecological sites. And take a look at the inventory of the data references that support these ecological sites. And if they're found a little shallow, then make plans to go out and collect more data to beef up and support those ecological sites. Next question is, where are you going to go to get the help to do this? Now, this office is lucky enough to have an ecological site position right there in the office, but even that, even one person fully employed is not going to be able to do everything. So you're going to have to look outside the area and bring in some additional help. Possible staffing resources that this office might look to. Wyoming has a state rangeland management specialist, a state wildlife biologist. There's also a number of other rangeland specialists scattered throughout the area. Grable is about 50 miles from Powell. Thermopolis about 100 miles. Worland about 90 miles. Also in Worland is a habitat biologist. And that might be a very key person if you're looking at updating the site descriptions to make them more beneficial to the sage-grouse initiative. I didn't bother looking at the staffing directories of some of our partners in the Cooperative Soil Survey, but we know that BLM is a player in that part of the world, as well as Park Service and the Forest Service, and they also would have resources available to help out in this effort, because they recognize that ecological sites are important to their work as well. Now we'll jump stream and take a look at an office that does not have a dedicated ecological site inventory position, and see how it see where their long-range plan and project plans might differ. My finger on this one fell on Carbondale, Illinois. This soil survey office 11-5. They get their soil quality assurance out of MO11 in Indianapolis, and their ecological inventory quality assurance comes out of MO10. They're in St. Paul, and that's the responsibility of Stacy Clark. This office is staffed a little bit heavier than the office out in Wyoming. Has a project leader, has 4 soil scientists. They're lucky enough to have a GIS specialist. The directory also said they have a regional representative, and I don't have a clue as to what that person does, but I'm sure it's something that's deemed important for that office. Well, as you may guess, I took a look at ecological sites that are correlated there in Illinois, and no surprise, there aren't any at the current time. But in about a 30-minute search using Google, found a couple of references to natural vegetation areas. That first one, White and Madney from 1978. They report on 74 different natural areas and natural communities found in the state of Illinois. I'm guessing that, without further review of that particular publication, I'm guessing they may have pulled from Voigt and Molenbrock, their work in 1964, which was done right down there in the southern corner of Illinois, and they recognized 13 communities unique to that area. So it would be, in lack of any ecological sites that currently exist, if I were to start in that area, I would probably start with some of these natural communities that have already been identified. Because more than likely, these will, as they play out, will probably end up being unique to, most of them will probably be unique to an ecological site. Possible update projects that one might consider in a long-range plan for this office is to research the soil correlation that was done in these publications, such as those 2 that I found real quickly, and see what kind of soils information was recorded in the description of those communities. Oftentimes, some of those actually have some pretty good soils information. Others, as you may expect, it's pretty sparse. But it's worth researching anyway to see what work has already been done. Most of these natural vegetation communities, particularly in the east, do a fairly good job of describing the types of vegetation that make up these communities. But as those of you more familiar with ecological sites know, that an ecological site is defined both by the kind and amount of vegetation. So an area to concentrate in would be to, someone's already done the work to define the kind of vegetation, but a possible project would be to go out and measure or collect data on the amounts of the various species within that vegetative community. Do research for additional historical vegetation literature, even stuff that's beyond that you can Google. There is a lot of stuff that did exist. You just have to go looking for it. Find out where these vegetative communities were described, and see if there are current sampling locations that exist in the same condition as when they were originally described, and see if they're accessible for sampling, both in terms of vegetation and soils, to make that correlation, see if that's available today. And then, obviously, what we all enjoy doing is actually going out and actually collect the data. What kind of resources are available to this office? Well, as we already mentioned, they do not have a dedicated quality control position. However, there is one just to the south of them in Milan, Tennessee, which may or may not be a resource. Now, granted, that's in a different MO. That sometimes that makes coordination a little challenging. And if I understand my history correct, that also crosses the Mason-Dixon line, which may or may not play a role here. But regardless, it's worth exploring and seeing if that position might be able to provide some assistance in this to this effort. In the state office in Illinois, the directory lists a biologist, a forester, 2 grassland specialists, and a resource conservationist that can be called upon to assist in this effort. In the area that pretty much straddles this soil survey office, you'll find a conservation forester. There are 23 resource conservationists. Now, a good number of these are actually employees of the conservation districts. However, that's still a resource that's close at hand that we can use to assist in this effort. There are 2 resource soil scientists, 8 soil cons, and a WRP specialist. Some of the partners that may want to look at real quickly that would be possible partners in these type of projects would be the Department of Natural Resources there in Illinois. Nature Conservancy is a player in that part of the world, as well as the Forest Service. This slide really is kind of dumb, but I put it in there, I guess, just to stress the point that the difference between an office that has one of these dedicated positions and one that doesn't really isn't all that different, other than having somebody right close at hand. The work is essentially the same in both offices. The responsibilities are the same, and you're still going to have to go outside the office to get the full amount of help that you need to do a quality job on ecological site inventory. So in terms of a recommendation for the project leaders out there, those wondering, so where do I start in terms of ecological inventory? I think the first thing that I would do is get a hold of your quality assurance specialist that covers your area. Even though not every office has a quality control person, every office is covered by a quality assurance person. So if they haven't contacted you, give them a call. Invite them to take a quick glance at your, if you have ecological sites already, have them take a look at them and see what condition they're in. And give you some ideas of where you might be able to improve those in your long range and project plans. Once some of those projects are identified, take them to your technical team and see what input they have. And see, in fact, a number of those people on the technical team probably will be the ones that will be providing the direct assistance in bringing these ecological sites up to current standards. If you don't have the positions and the specialty within your own office or within the technical team that supports your office, then look elsewhere, but identify the people that are needed and schedule their assistants to come in and provide that help for this inventory. And last but not least, any work that you do on ecological inventory, report the progress on that in NAFIS. Of course, now that is, as most of you probably know, that's not mandatory for this fiscal year. We were able to dodge that bullet, but you know as well as I do that it's coming. And for those of us that may be charged with developing some of those goals, it would be of value to us to see, even though you may not have goals for this year, if you have accomplishments, feel free to enter those. It'll give those of us talking about planning for future goals, give us an opportunity to see what's been done and an idea of how we might make those goals applicable down to the soil survey offices in the future.
Hey, Curtis?
Yes.
What would you consider a reasonable goal to be? Complete a ecological site description or complete I mean, I don't know that acres are... Is going to be acres, or is it going to be complete site description?
The question, for those who couldn't hear, I think, and I couldn't hear very well either, was, what would be a good goal or good progress to record? Is it just acres, or is there something else? Right now, progress recorded on a project is by acres. However, and that's what you would record in NASIS. However, it would be beneficial to collect on the side, number of ecological sites identified, number described, number updated. That additional ancillary information is what will be helpful in continuing to define the workload in the future. Now, these won't be, certainly they won't be, you don't expect those to be the same. Every office is going to be a little bit different depending on the resources they have at hand and the work conditions that they're in and the status of their workload right now.
Curtis, this is Paul Benedict. Can I step in for a second there?
You bet.
Right now, the thing that we'll report in PRS is just the acres. Those other things that Curtis was mentioning may be very important for us to reporting as well, but for PRS, at least for the time being, it will just be the acres of ecological sites inventoried.
Thanks, Paul. Exactly. But the other stuff can be passed up through the channel so that we can, I know it would be very beneficial to us here in Lincoln to know what kind of accomplishments that the various offices have had in terms of numbers as well as acres.
How are we using the ecological sites as an agency or our customers? I mean, there's this emphasis on getting ecological sites. How do we convince our technical teams are really important projects to elevate to the top?
That is a good question for areas, and I know there are areas, particularly in the east, that are in their planning. Or developed a marketing initiative in terms of providing better examples of how these are used in conservation planning and in use by our partners as well.
It would be a great benefit to those of us in the East who don't have a history of this to have some of those talking points given to us, because it's going to be a real challenge to get very scarce staff to help out. So anything that you all could provide us that we could provide to our resources staff would be a real benefit.
I think that would be a very doable project for. I don't want to put words in my boss's mouth right now, but that would probably be a very doable project for this staff here to prepare that set of talking points to distribute. So I would expect you may see that in the.
Okay. It would be greatly appreciated, and I think absolutely necessary for getting buy-in from the people who would have to be doing the work.
Kurt, are you got more slides to show, or are you taking questions now?
Well, I'm pretty much done.
Okay,
Shane, but just to
I
look
wanted
at
to know.
real quick through it. These were the two myths that I wanted to, and hopefully at least now everyone can reply on the same sheet of music. A balanced effort between SSRA and S&T. At the Soil Survey Office is the platform in which we want to approach doing sites, regardless of whether there is a unique position staff there or not. Okay, now it's open for questions.
Kurt, this is Shane in Utah.
How you doing, Shane?
Pretty well, thanks. Your workflow example in the first one in Wyoming.
Yes.
I didn't see a role or how the state range specialist would fit into that.
That's correct, and again, I limited this one directly, trying to concentrate on the role of the project leaders in the office. But as you know, and as you have done, you've played a major role in heck, in all levels of ecological inventory. But, you know, as a state specialist, you're primarily responsible for the quality assurance, and you still would be. You know, one of the things that, as we look at this effort, these new positions are really only looking at the vegetative community work, description, just the inventory part. You know, the whole second half of the description is the interpretive part, and that will remain the responsibility of the traditional S&T staff. A necessary role for the state specialist to continue to function in that role, as well as say the experience of those state specialists. I would imagine that yourself and the other state specialists would still be heavily involved in the technical teams on these individual soil survey offices. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I hadn't heard the idea before about there being a division of duties in the, you know, the two parts of the site description, somebody being in charge of interp and somebody being in charge of the front end part.
And that was kind of described in a proposed workflow plan that is actually sitting on the desks of the deputy chiefs for those two deputy areas right now. You know, and it may not come back. In fact, I would hope that when it a hard and fast division, that we could, you know, bottom line is we want to look at who has the expertise and who's best suited to do the work, and that's who we want to empower. Even though I said that, you know, the part would stay with S&T and the inventory part would survey. You know, I would expect there to be a lot of crossover, particularly when it gets down to that soil survey office level.
Yes.
Hey, Curtis, this is Chuck here, Gordon.
How you doing, Chuck?
Within our agency, I think I understand the roles of the soil survey division, which is, you know, the state range con and the science and technology. But just on a broader picture, is the NRCS responsible for ecological site descriptions amongst all agencies? And if not, then why does the SRC sign off on them?
Well, that's something that'll be, you know, as we work out this new, as we pilot this interagency handbook on rangelands, an interesting area that is yet to be fully fleshed out is to actually have you know, responsibility on all ecological sites. You know, for lack of a firm answer right now, I would say that on private ecological sites that are primarily on private lands, it will remain the responsibility of NRCS to take the lead on. You know, those that are primarily on federal lands, I think over time we would expect to see our partners step up and take a higher profile role in those. As you know, right now, much of the ecological sites that exist on federal lands has simply been contracted out to us, and so NRCS has really pretty much been the lead in terms of quality control and quality assurance on all ecological sites, no matter who the land ownership is.
Question, please. Curtis?
Yes.
Are you able to go back on your slide to the one with the map showing the ecological new positions that are in the various locations?
Which one? The soil survey offices or the regional one?
Regional, the MO offices.
Okay.
By the way, while you're doing that, this is Tony Ingersoll. I'm the SRC out here in the Pacific Islands area in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Oh, it sounds like you're in the room next door.
There's a humming sound, so it's kind of hard to hear you.
Yeah, it is kind of tough.
To that map, I have a...
That one there?
Yes, sir. Hey, you'll notice our person is from Moseley and Portland. If you look at Hawaii, we have, you have it listed as Hawaii Impact Basin. We no longer use those terms. We use Well, all those little islands in the lower left corner, including Hawaii, are larger in distance than the continental United States.
That is correct.
We have to fly to every one, and the expense is great. Sitting around doing these ESEs in Hawaii is great. Even with that, we've got about the work of David Kosmisser and Lori Metz, who've got about done. I guess my question is there a chance we can get any help with our ESEs out here, considering our difficult challenge in getting them done?
Let me ask my boss real quick if I can come out there.
Okay. On a permanent basis? I guess I just want to make that point that we have a very, very large area and an extremely high expense.
I fully understand some of the limitations there. You know, prior to coming to there I was aware of that, aware of some of those logistical problems, and unfortunately I don't have other than, making the request, Lori's good.
Yeah, very good.
She's only one person, going so far, but I know she has provided
here within a week or two if we get permission from the regional con, but that's the other person that...
We got some good folks at the West NTSC in Portland.
This is Chad McGrath, the MO leader in Portland, and I hope you can all hear me because this sound is pretty poor, but we already have that in our plan to cover your area, and we will, if we have the request and the work plans and so on in place, we will make sure we have Kendra spend as much time there as we can and still service all of the other areas that we're responsible for.
Okay, that'd be great. I appreciate that immensely.
Oh, you're sure welcome, and that's in our plan. So,
great. Thank you very much.
Hey, this is Steve Park, Curtis.
Hey, Steve.
Got a couple comments. I don't know what's going on with the noise, but it is really pretty bad.
Yep.
You almost sound like you're breaking up at times. Number one, comment that ESD workflow document. I don't know if you've got any influence or the national leaders are listening, but we need that document out as soon as possible. That really helps with the roles and responsibilities and helps the questions like Shane had get answered. We really can't wait a whole lot longer on those documents. The second thing is these maps. This is the first time I've seen these maps. And if you go to the one with the MLRA Soil Survey offices, it's kind of inaccurate, so I don't know if you want to update that, but I'm not sure who put that together, but it's kind of not quite right.
Yeah, there are some errors on there. I'm still trying to chase down who the origin of these, because I've been pinged a couple of times on different errors on this, and I expect there'll be updates as it goes along too. So, yep.
But Curtis, this is Chad again, and I think Paul Reich is actually the one that put this map together, and Paul Benedict can maybe correct me if that's not true, but I think that's who it is.
Chad, the noise is so bad I couldn't even understand which map you're talking about.
It's the one with the ecological site inventory specialist locations, and these are the field positions, and I think that is Paul Reich that takes care of that.
Yes, I believe he is the one that put that together. That's right.
Perfect. I'll get in touch with Paul then, and we'll get a plan together on cleaning up the errors and getting it updated on a timely basis.
Yeah, we can do that.
In the States, I'm not sure what database they're using, but I don't have a position where they show it there in Alamosa. I have two others that aren't being shown.
I think this was information came by calling people, so they may have had some bad information or some things didn't fall through as they planned. I don't know.
You must have been out of the office that day, Steve.
Curtis?
Yes.
This is Cleveland.
Hey, Cleveland, how you doing?
Just fine. I got a question about the orange areas and the gray area. Now, is the orange areas is the only place where those people are going to work at, or is they going to be responsible for more than just that particular?
I would expect that, and some of the, as I've talked to a few of these people, I would expect them to concentrate mostly in that area. However, if there is a project that's immediately adjacent to their area, that kind of like that one talked about in Urbandale. And provide some assistance. It's all about staff sharing. I would think that they would concentrate within the area to.
Well, if that's the case, how are we going to finish this?
Still in the other areas?
Yes.
Well, I don't know what the long-term plan is, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that there were an additional number of positions that were. Half of these were funded in 2010. The other half were funded in 2011. I don't know if they're going to be, if that trend will continue. Maybe Paul or someone else at National Headquarters.
Yeah, I can kind of tell you what Mike's thoughts are on this. Is that, of course, this is all budget related. We hope to have in additional years more funding available to fill more positions. However, we're still probably never going to have enough money to staff them the way we do for the soil survey part of things. So the idea is that this is kind of seed money, and I think we don't have any goals for this year, and normally this type of work would be funded through CTA, and I think you may start to see goals for states for ecological site inventory, maybe not in 2012, but possibly, but definitely for sure in 2013.
And that would that be a state conservationist goal coming from the chief and the regional con, or
just like soil survey? Yes, It'd be the state conservationists working through the regional conservationists.
Well, with the reality of the situation, we don't have enough money or staff to cover all these areas. They're going to have to share areas. And a lot of times
that's right. I think that's what Mike was thinking would need to happen. That these people are not just frozen into wherever you happen to put them, but you guys can decide which areas are their high priorities.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And I would expect that if you look at a long-range plan, there may be some of those items that are towards the tail end that they'll always be on the plan, but some of them you might have a hard time getting to. They just keep getting bumped forward or bumped back, as the case may be.
Curtis, this is Dennis Thompson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on this a little bit, and it goes back to some of those initial questions where Shane asked a couple questions, and also what Chuck was asking, and then goes all the way back to this workflow document. The process described in this workflow document recognizes was developed, and I was one of the co-developers along with Joel Brown of that document. So it cuts across, deputy area responsibilities. And what I want to throw out is that there's a responsibility and the opportunity where there's not, sufficient staff at the soil survey office. And it recognizes that there is a responsibility at the state office through the SRC and the local CTA staff to assist in this, and they can be part of that planning process and part of the data, the development process. Right? That's what we put into that workflow document. They would coordinate those activities through the MO offices to the MLRA office as well. Those work, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, going back to the some of the comments made at the start of this presentation, all this is just an acceleration of the effort that already exists. So all the work that's currently being done, particularly in the West, those positions are expected to stay in place and to continue functioning. The state specialists are expected to continue to assist in this effort. The area staffs are expected to continue. I mean, nothing's being taken away from it, it's just adding to.
And I think the other part is well recognized by everybody that there's a tremendous amount of work needed to market this, the opportunities that ESDs bring to the table to support the conservation planning process, to support the delivery of the agency's conservation programs through ESD development, forest suitability group development. For those activities, then the team and that the acceleration efforts that we've got going on. So there's a real opportunity, but it's a real challenge to us to get it done. What we do recognize is that it is going to be done in partnership. So the other part of this is we are also looking at expanding the partnership with the other agencies as well, the Forest Service, the BLM, the potential that they can have a component in here. And Chuck, as you asked, there's a potential that you would invite those folks to be part of the review process, to be part of the data, the data collection, et cetera, with other agencies. That chapter really hasn't been fully written yet, but I think some of the folks are looking at how the other agencies are saying, how can we help on this process? They see the values of ESG as well.
This is Steve Park. One more comment. I'm starting to get a lot of questions from my state cons in my region about how this is all going to work. And I've actually got a board of directors meeting tentatively planned to tell them how I think it's going to work. But they're wondering, are we going to get different stories from each MO? So is there any thinking that there needs to be some sort of briefing with the state cons on this roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, maybe on a regional basis, or because I hate for these state cons to hear slightly different stories from each MO or how this is going to work.
Can't afford that. Exactly. So I would hope that there would be some consistent message and platform to talk to them on that.
Well, I think this is something that we can, at the national office, we can work with Mike Terrell, Mike Golden, and Terrell Erickson. He's the director of ecological science. Help make that happen. You think that'd be a benefit?
Well, I think they just kind of want to know a lot of what we talked about here today, and who does what, how's the state range con still involved, and that kind of thing, so that we're consistent with these roles and responsibilities.
Listen, Chuck, here, in my simple mind, in the soil survey business, we really have two things, inventory and application. We inventory and develop the data, and then somebody uses it, and we help them do it. I don't view this as any different. You've got the inventory side of the CSDs, and then you've got the state range cons, the SRCs, and the science and technology folks that apply.
And I agree, Chuck. I'm just not sure that everybody else does. So.
Gotcha.
This is Chad, and I think it was last summer, Mike and at that time it was Bill.
It's Mike Huff.
Mike Huff, yeah, it was Mike and Mike, yeah. And they held a teleconference for the state conservationists, and I think it's probably time maybe for something like that again, because I think that I agree with both of you, Steve and Chuck, and Dennis. I think you really hit the nail on the head too. And this is really just trying to help accelerate the program, as Curtis said, and we still need everybody involved. And I think you were exactly right, Chuck, because to me, this is the way that it's supposed to be designed. Is right after the soil survey program. We have the project side and the technical soil services side, and basically this is the same with ecological sites, the way I see it.
I agree.
And I think the reason we wrote the workflow, and that was one of the things that we tried to incorporate in there, is because the brunt of the job that we're being asked to do, this size of it, the national scope of this thing, is that we're really going to need to bring in, maybe in a different way than we, because the limited capabilities, we're going to have to bring in some additional partners and try to develop that avenue. We've got a little bit of acceleration going, and I think it's a great thing that we're doing it, but we've got to look at other opportunities, as we have, as you have done in cooperative soil survey in the past, as well as probably in other players. So I think we ought to think about how we can do that as well with this effort. But again, we have that role to help coordinate this and make it happen in accelerated fashion.
Well, I just had some meetings with the state BLM and Forest Service ESD leads, and they're all pumped up about what we're doing, and they're actually talking about coming to the table with some funds to share, fund some positions next year to help with this ESD effort.
And I think you'll see a variety of different ways that this happens. It may be funds, it may be the opportunity to put some staff on, or they might give you a staff to help you do that. That inventory process on that data collection from red analysis. There's lots of different ways that this can really come out. The bottom, I think we need to look at those opportunities and share with others what might be possibilities to get this job done.
Any other questions? I'm getting the kill-off sign from Bart.
Do we possibly have these maps?
If anybody would like a copy of these maps, get a hold of me. I'd be happy to ship them to you. They're also available. They're up on our SharePoint site. Just shoot me an email and I'll send them to you.
Okay, sounds.
With that, I appreciate everybody signing in. Sorry the connection wasn't any better, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis.